Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask an Educator, Sophia Speaks Special Edition. I'm so excited to announce our upcoming guest, but I thought that I would recap for those of you who are tuning in for the first time as to why I'm even here on the LEC podcast. The LEC and I have been in cahoots for a while now. We've been in collaboration on a variety of fronts. I was their former keynote speaker in an incredible conference back in, I believe, October. And then I was a former guest on this same podcast. And then I was part of their inaugural cohort for the Storytellers for Change. And so we just thought that it would be the next best thing for us to collaborate. LEC is known for amplifying that Latinx voice in the K through 12 space and really increasing the need for representation in our classrooms. And I ain't even from KC. And yes, they have backed me, they have supported me, and they have given me the stage and have given me a seat at the table. So I have had the honor and the privilege for the past couple of weeks to interview some of my closest friends and colleagues that are in the trenches. My first two podcasts, I focused on early service teachers, the first 5 years. And I had the privilege to interview some of my colleagues here at Morton East in the Chicagoland area. And then I took it to my old stomping ground, Chicago Public Schools. And I had the honor and privilege of speaking with two colleagues that are nestled right in the heart of the city of Chicago and also at the intersection of dual language and bilingual education. So I thought that it would be the next best thing for us to journey further and take a look at different aspects within the world of EDU. And so for my next two podcast episodes, to include this one, we are going to journey along the pathway of higher education and nonprofit leadership and what that means for us as a Latinx community. And so it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce my director of a nonprofit that I'm a part of called Edifying Teachers. We'll go into that. And colleague in the trenches, Dr. Rudy Ruiz, who is here in the house this afternoon. How are you, sir?
Sophia, great to be here with you and community and with so many others that are tuning in this afternoon.
I am so excited that you're here. This is going to be such an epic episode because you and I sit at the intersection of so many streams of influence, and I'm just excited to dive in. I'm excited to crack open your story that I feel like has so many moving parts, and you and I share so much in common. We are just audacious, ambitious, and persistent when it comes to the work, when it comes to la lucha. But before I even share with the listening audience, and please feel free to leave comments along the way. We enjoy your commentary. This is a collaborative conversation. You tell us about who you are, where you come from, who are your people, what is your cultura? Tell us who Dr. Rudy is.
Thanks again so much, Sophia. We've got some friends visiting right now, actually, here in our kitchen who are visiting from the Midwest, where you all are based. So coming out from Milwaukee. So I grew up in the inner city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but my people are from central Mexico, basically, via Texas. So it was about 100 years ago now where my family basically moved up from Texas and Mexico. And we're part of what they call in Milwaukee, Los Primeros, the first Mexican Americans to settle in Milwaukee. And so most of my extended family still lives in Milwaukee. My family and I have been out here in Maryland now for about 9 years.
That is so awesome. And I just love that mix of things. And again, a fellow Mexican, I'm half Mexican. And so that's just great, right? To share that rich culture. But your story really extends far. And again, I never fall short of being impressed by it. Tell us about your journey to the classroom and ultimately like the nonprofit world and sitting on boards. I mean, there are so many avenues that you took professionally. Like, unpack that for us.
Absolutely. And so for some of the folks who are tuning in, and yourself as well, obviously we are, scholars as well. And so we are trying to make sure we understand the problem so that we can address it at its root. And so one of the leading researchers that looks at opportunity across the country, some of you may recognize the name Raj Chetty. And so he did a big data project out of Harvard a few years ago called the Opportunity Atlas. And you can actually dig into your zip code and take a look at the demographics and take a look at all this data from decades. And he basically, if you take a look at, myself being a Latino from the inner city of Milwaukee and my zip code, his data showed I had less than a 1% chance of kind of making it out. But my intent was not to make it out, but to make it better. And so I ended up being a first gen grad from Stanford University, came back home to Milwaukee. Ended up teaching in what would have been my neighborhood public high school right there on the south side, and just fell in love with making a difference with the young people from my neighborhood, and just have continued to find new and exciting ways to make a difference at a bigger and bigger scale, from the local level up to the state level and now the national level.
And so you were a former math teacher, right? Did I get that right? High school math?
That's right. High school math and computer science as well.
High school math and computer science. But you, again, right, that was like literally your starting point. And then you literally just kind of like continue to climb and ascend and ascend. And now you're with a variety of like nonprofit organizations. You sit on boards. You work with like after school programs, and you recently just got your doctorate. So congratulations on that, your EDD. Man, that is no easy feat. And what's really cool about that is that your dissertation kind of evolved into what I'm involved in with you, which is edifying teachers. And let me just say this for the listening audience. Listen, let me tell you something about Dr. Rudy. Dr. Rudy has some of the most incredible networking skills on the planet. Okay. Dr. Rudy, and listen, like I get direct messages on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I get like random emails from folks for different opportunities. And I'm like, who are you? I don't know you. I don't know what's happening. Right. But when I got your direct message and when you invited me to a Zoom to talk about edifying teachers, I just like instantly felt comfortable with you. I really felt like you had this mission and this vision. And now I'm your mentor director for this robust startup. I just want to like quickly dive into that because I just kind of fell into that like in this moment. And it's just so cool, like how we just kind of intersected the power of the internet, right? And bringing forces together. So tell us about that. Like you went to pursue your PhD, and your dissertation really meant something to you, and it really evolved into something actual and something that we could see in this moment.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I was, happily teaching, like you said, high school math and computer science at two Southside high schools for about 8 years. And along the way also was giving back through my other passion besides education, which is the sport of amateur wrestling. So I was a teacher and a coach pretty much at every level, and was happily doing that for about 8 years altogether. I started getting pulled into school leadership, and then came up with some innovative ways to help address some of the challenges that I saw at the middle and high school level. And so pretty quickly got recruited into district leadership in Milwaukee. I was the first director of college and career readiness for the city.
Wow.
And so what I learned actually from folks in your neighborhood in Chicago who were doing what they call a researcher practitioner partnership was the fact that we can do more when we work together. And so instead of just, a school or a district trying to do it all on their own, to realize, hey, there are all these different, nonprofit groups, all these different agencies, all these different institutions and people that want to help. But there wasn't really anybody doing a good job of coordinating all of that. And so when I was in Milwaukee, I learned about this concept that they call collective impact actually was coined by some people from Stanford.
Wow.
But the idea is, hey, if we can coordinate better, we can accomplish more, right? Together, everyone achieves more. And so was able to put together a network of 55 organizations in Milwaukee, really moved the needle. And basically, before I got into that role, less than 42% of the high school seniors in Milwaukee were completing the federal application for financial aid. And so over the course of 5 years, that number steadily climbed to almost 73%, which
Wow.
is pretty unheard of really in the field. And so I got an opportunity to come out here to do similar work in Baltimore City Public Schools. Basically kind of ran my same playbook from Milwaukee because a lot of that work wasn't happening at the time in Baltimore. And so put together a network of 60 organizations here in Baltimore. And like you said, in terms of the networking, it really is just about trying to think about how can we make sure that young people and the schools that they're in have the resources and supports and opportunities that they need. And so it's been just a blessing to be able to link arms with people like yourself, like-minded, motivated people that want things to be better for young people from backgrounds like ours. And when I got here to Baltimore, I decided, you know what, it was great, that I had the opportunity to get my master's degree back in Milwaukee, but I want to continue my education. And so when I applied to the doctoral program here at Johns Hopkins University School of Education in Baltimore, in programs like that, they ask you right off the bat when you're applying, they say, what's a problem of practice? What's something that essentially you're going to write your dissertation on, a problem that you've seen from your professional experience that you think you can help inform the field about, something that you can find out, something different that other people haven't realized and something you can maybe make a little change in. And so for myself, even though I was kind of known in that college and career readiness field, I realized that from my experience, the biggest issue from the students' perspective was, they weren't having consistent access to teachers that had the support that they need. And so year over year, some students are getting, substitute math teachers and, different people day by day, year by year, people that haven't had enough training and support along the way. And so for the past 8 years, I've been not only researching, but being somebody who's always wanted to put the research into action. My whole intent was, let me make sure that as I'm learning things and identifying what can be done, that I'm also thinking about how can I put this into action. And so I'm just so grateful to have great leaders like yourself to be part of this network that we're now putting into action to support teachers and communities around the country.
I love it. And you've got some love in the chat. We've got Senora ONeill talking about Dr. Ruiz is the truth, speaking that truth. And here's what's so impressive about you. You're so responsive. So as you're continuing on in your journey and you're ebbing and flowing, you're responding to those needs and you engage in what I call action research, right? This idea of, as you're researching for your dissertation, you're like, how can we put meat on these bones? How can we put fuel in this engine? And how can we make this real? And I feel like Edifying Teachers really embraces that, like research and action. So Edifying Teachers, right? It's this like mentorship program that really helps specifically teachers of color. So we're dealing with so many issues at once, from teacher retention to teacher representation, to mentoring, to culturally responsive practices, and to really help those teachers that are in the trenches with those best practices so that they could stay in front of the kids, mirrors and windows. There's so much going on. I definitely want to share a quick video, right? It's funny because I was in DC this summer, right, on my full-time fellowship with Urban Leaders Fellows, and I was able to connect with you and my partner organization, Strong Schools Maryland. And while I was there, while we were collaborating and networking, y'all were like, look, Ms. G needs to go ahead and make a video so that we could go ahead and get these things going. And so let's take a look at this video that really highlights more of the program and what we're looking to accomplish. Let's go ahead and take a look.
Hi, my name is Sophia, part of the Edifying Teachers leadership team. Listen, I know our students need highly effective, qualified teachers, and that early career teachers need more support to stay and grow so that they can help our students achieve their ultimate potential. Having served as a high school Chicago public school teacher entering my 14th year and identifying as a Latina, I know that new teachers of color have additional challenges to staying and growing as well. I have experienced EDU inequities firsthand, and I know that when students have access to teachers of color, they are more engaged and successful both in the classroom and in life. That's my why, what motivates me, making sure to be part of the transformational change to improve the conditions for our teachers and our students. We know that most states require new teachers to receive a local mentor to help guide them in their first year. Edifying teachers, coaches supplement those basic supports, providing more personalized and specific coaching, matching the new teacher's needs at any given day. The Edifying Teachers team works with local schools and district partners to develop a community of support, providing a bit of a hybrid model that brings together local mentors and coaches from our national network to ensure all early career teachers have the right guidance and the support that they need in order to be successful. I have served as a virtual coach and will be leading the Edifying Teachers training along with other members of the Edifying Teachers leadership team, who you'll meet soon. We just want to help you to feel comfortable with supporting teachers using the coaching cycle and culturally sustaining practices that empower you, them, and their students. We ask our members of our paid coaches network to be available just for a minimum of 60 minutes per month, or based on when you are able to. Now, for your first assignment, we just ask that you record a 60-second video sharing a little bit about your background, who you are, your content area, your grade level, and ultimately your why. Why do you think teacher representation matters? And what has motivated you to apply to the Edifying Teachers Network? We'll see you soon.
So dope. I was having a wonderful hair day that day. Gosh, no one even told me. I digress. The importance, right? The importance of this mentorship program that we are, aiming to continue to grow and develop. I'll pause. We have a comment in the chat or a question. What grades does this support? Go ahead, Dr. Rudy.
Yes, thanks so much, Sophia, for sharing. Your video. It was great. Thank you as well, Dr. Galindo, for asking the question. And you shouted out earlier, Sophia, Regina ONeill. So Regina is one of our local edifiers, as we call them here in Baltimore. And so once a month, we bring our local edifiers together in person to the school that we support here as our school partner for the in-person component of our hybrid model. But then also we have one-on-one virtual coaching. So the 60 minutes that was mentioned in your video, those are 2 30-minute sessions that we provide for mentorship and coaching with well-matched edifiers, as we call them, drawing from our network from around the country. And so we're supporting pre-K through 12 teachers around the country. And we are not only interested in supporting, early career educators, but also even experienced educators and aspiring educators. So we think about, what people call the teacher pipeline, not as some, siloed linear, system, but as people of color think about community and more of a circle. When we connect with people like our good friend Tamir Harper, who is a first-year teacher back in his hometown of Philly, out in West Philly. So he's living the real Abbott Elementary.
That's right.
When we think about him, and he, when I first met him a few years ago, he was just getting started as an undergrad, and he's told me, someday I'm going to be superintendent back in Philly. And I was like, well, you know what? I've got a couple, Black superintendents in my network. Let me introduce you right now. So, to me, it's not a matter of let me, give you support from somebody who's just the next level up, so to speak. But we're all a community, so let's all support each other in different ways and provide that mentorship holistically.
Awesome. And we've got some more comments in the chat. We run into the exact same thing at the elementary level. Thank you for that comment. And it is so true. When I was doing my first 5 years in the inner city of Chicago, and many of you know my story, I would have loved mentorship. I almost left the profession because, working at a second chance charter, dealing with some of our nation's most vulnerable students and bearing them to gang and to gun violence, it's like, being a recipient of secondary and vicarious trauma, working with communities of color, very marginalized, because these kids were either kicked out or dropped out of the Chicago public school system. Man, Dr. Rudy, I had nobody. I had no one really in my corner, just a few colleagues and my principal at the time that was trying to prevent the ship from sinking. And so this is why I'm passionate about this framework at Edifying Teachers, and why I am committed to it, because it really creates an opportunity for some of our teachers that need to stay in front of our nation's kids, an opportunity to get with a community of like-mindeds, to get in the room with a system of support that will carry them through. And we'll talk about what isn't talked about in our teacher certification programs. They don't really address some of these issues that some of us who sign up for tough teaching assignments have to engage. Some of these really hot issues that are just really devastational if they are not addressed. We've got more comments, more love for you, Dr. Rudy. He is a proven leader. Yes, he is. And I'm just so excited that we're having this conversation. And so moving along here, right? So you go into higher ed then, and you recently just gained an adjunct role at Johns Hopkins. Tell us about that. And can you talk to us as a Latino adjunct? What have you already noticed in higher ed are some of the challenges? I'll throw out just like a few stats here. In the fall of 2017, about 3/4 of post-secondary faculty members in the U.S. were white. That's about 76%, according to Pew Research and the National Center of EDU. In 2017, only 5% of faculty members were Latino. Black faculty were just as underrepresented at a dismal 6%. What can you say about that? And what can you already see are some challenges in terms of mirrors and windows and that of representation?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Sophia. This week, a lot of our mutual friends and collaborators are down in Austin for South by Southwest. And I know there was a great presentation today, I think one as well the last couple of days, in connection with a national campaign called the 1 Million Teachers of Color campaign. And so the number is not a random number. The reason why that campaign is called the 1 Million Teachers of Color campaign is that that's how many teachers we would need to bring in and keep, which is our focus, the retention piece, in order for there to be proportionality in terms of the fact that the majority of our students now are students of color. So when people ask, why does this matter? We support teachers from all backgrounds in the work that we're doing, but research shows that when students of color have teachers that are the same background as them, they report feeling more cared for, more interested in their schoolwork, more confident in their teacher's ability to communicate with them, and more desire to pursue post-secondary education. So representation absolutely matters. You gave out some of the statistics. Obviously, we both have lived that. And so, people ask me, why am I taking on these additional roles and opportunities? It's because we didn't make it this far just to make it this far.
That's right.
We are trying to not just beat the odds, but to change the odds for our young people around the country.
I love that. And I did an 8-year stint in higher ed, and I was one of the only Latinas on the faculty, roster. And what that meant for some of my students, they came back to tell me, and they were just really excited to have a woman of color in the space, talking about the lived experiences, talking about the real issues. And that cultural identity piece, I feel, is so key. Many of our students in the K through 12 space and even post-secondary often feel like they have to leave their identity at the door. But educators like you and I were like, bring your whole self into the space, be your authentic self. Let's amplify your cultural landscape as opposed to oppressing it. So this whole idea of like really fusing in culturally responsive frameworks, decolonization. I spent a lot of time decolonizing stuff, disrupting stuff, and just really being a presence I was talking with my former guest about this idea of translanguaging. I don't know how far you go, but obviously you consider your audience and my dominant audience. I mean, most of my kids are from Mexico, and I have a large roster of multilingual learners. So there's multiple languages swirling around in their head. And guess what? Mine too. So if I want to break out in Spanglish, I will. And what that does for our students, right? Emulating what it is to come in as your authentic self. So we're glad that you are in the higher ed space. We are glad that you're really permeating these different pathways to represent, to amplify, and to lift up. I honestly feel like you're the Cesar Chavez of like nonprofit work and leadership, because here's what you do, Dr. Rudy. And I feel like you do this like authentically. I feel like you do this organically. You don't even think about it. You literally walk around with invisible chairs for folks, and the spaces that you are in, you literally pull those seats up to the table. And let me just acknowledge that. And let me just say that that is such a gift to communities of color. That is such a gift and a blessing that you are doing. And that is so powerful. One of my mentors once told me, when you get that seat at the table, leave the door open for the person behind you that looks just like you. Man, that resonates with me so deeply, that we could not only get into these spaces and places because we have the resume, because we have the pedigree, because we have the favor, and we have those open doors and the opportunities. And we're alike on so many fronts. We leverage stuff. We see like a sliver of light from that door. We slamming that door open. We're like, what? Where's that next opportunity? Because we're on mission, right? And I just wanted to pause and like really just lift you up in that way, because I feel like, man, this is how we progress, right? This is how we move the work forward. Not only getting in spaces to amplify the work that is within us, but looking alongside of us and saying, who can we bring up along the way? And I think that that flows from you, and we can't have you stop. So you definitely have to continue to take care of yourself. And I'll definitely ask you what keeps you going in a second here. But for sure, I mean, tell us about all of the other things that you're involved in. Man, so you're with 4 Points, then you're with Beat the Streets. Like, let the people know, like, where are you at, and why are you so passionate about these pathways?
Well, Sophia, I think, part of it is I see that oftentimes, folks like us, we're each blazing a new trail, but oftentimes it can be, a lonely journey. And so in a number of the nonprofits that I work with, they are led by people of color. And many times, they're creating something new in their respective spaces, and they don't necessarily have the support that they need. And they don't necessarily have the teams around them that they need. And they don't necessarily know, how to access different types of support, different resources, whether that be grant funding or other types of supports that they need to be sustainable in their good work. So, for example, I'm on the board of the Latino Education Advancement Fund. And so that's a Baltimore-based nonprofit that works not just nationally, but in Puerto Rico and Mexico. And so we're empowering hundreds of Latino families to better understand their local school systems and navigate and advocate for their students. That is a group that's led by a Latina here. It was from Baltimore, is now kind of splitting time in Baja California and Baltimore. But again, she got a 1-year fellowship and basically said, I want to make this thing real, bring it to life. But you need, and as you know, with a nonprofit, you need a strong board, you need a supportive board, you need an active board. And that's not something that, a person can do all those things by themselves. So they need that support. And so, my gift is the gift of encouragement. And so I like to encourage my my fellow leaders, and some of those being the executive directors of these nonprofits, but also to kind of rally the troops in terms of others to say, hey, come and join this board and help be a part of this.
Let me just pause you really quick. Sorry, let me just pause you because I know you're going to go to like a different pathway for leave. Let me just let the people know. Okay, so this is Dr. Rudy, right? So he's always looking for opportunities, and he knows that like speaking is such a thing for me. Like, I'm really looking for opportunities to speak. So with Leaf, with this nonprofit that he's speaking of, he's like, Sophia, we have an opportunity for you. But guess what? This keynote in this particular conference is going to be in Spanish, 100% Spanish. I was like, Dr. Rudy, I mean, I speak Spanish, but man. And so you gave me such an opportunity along with this wonderful woman. I love her. Yeah, she is amazing, the founder. And I had such a great time with that conference and with the stakeholders that you all serve. And 100% en español. Y para mí es un poquito difícil, pero uno tiene que seguir adelante, ¿no? For those who don't speak Spanish, I said, look, it was all in Spanish, 100%. Wasn't that easy for me, but we move forward when we are charged with a task. And as a Latina, second gen, we got to keep developing that language. But I just thought that was so dope. Thank you again, Dr. Rudy. This is what it's all about. I'm such a big fan of Leaf, and they're doing amazing things for our families so that they can gain access to, what their children are learning in school and all of the opportunities that oftentimes go over our heads as a result of language barriers, just to name some. But sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to insert that again. That bounce pass, like, you are just all about the bounce passes.
No, that's a great example. And I'm glad you shared it. You mentioned earlier the word luchador. So for myself, again, since I've been so involved in the sport of wrestling my whole life, the term luchador has two dual meanings for me. Like, one, the struggle that we're doing in the education space, but also, in connection with the sport of wrestling. But besides luchador, the other word, that I think that a good friend of mine that you got to meet when doing that video, Jonathan, pointed out is, if you had to summarize me in one word, is as a coach. And so some of this work that I'm trying to do is helping develop other coaches. But, I had another team member, a woman of color who pointed out, Rudy, you give us these opportunities, but sometimes it feels like you're throwing us in the deep end. But that's part of the growth and development, and the work that a coach does is to say, all right, we're gonna move forward together, but we're all going to grow in the process.
I just love that. And that's literally what it's all about. Like, that does describe you so well, this idea of being a coach where you see things in us that we don't see in ourselves, where you push out the potential when we're right about to pivot into that next dimension of growth. I mean, those are gifts, right? And that really comes innate with like natural born leadership skills, which is where, you live and where you have really shined in every area and space and place that you've had the privilege of engaging and growing and developing. All these things are going on, right? You're sitting on boards, you're working with edifying teachers, you just finished your doctorate, you're just, in so many different areas. We've got to ask you this question. I mean, honestly, what keeps you going? Like, what keeps you fueled? What keeps you rested? What keeps your heart from not leaping outside of your chest as we continue to address systemic issues that would affect our nation's kids and our teachers and all of the stakeholders that we care so much about? What keeps you going?
Well, one thing that would really surprise you is to hear that I'm a natural introvert. And so in some ways it's kind of funny, because it's like I'm doing it for the kids, as they say, right? But in connecting with other, great folks like yourself, and you'll see a number of people in the chat that we collaborate with, great team members, we kind of fill each other's cup, right? And keep each other going and motivate each other, because, day by day, moment to moment, it can be very challenging. And like I said, sometimes it can be very lonely, but we know, that our hearts are in it. We know that we're making a difference, like I said, for not only the young people, but for the communities, and especially long term. There's that phrase, I think it was the Indian philosopher who said, the one who plants a seed of a tree where he won't get to sit in the shade, like, is beginning to understand.
Wow, that's just so dope. And these are things that we really have to have in play. When I was interviewing for an edifying teacher interview with Tamir, he was asking about my best practices. Like, he's like, what's your playbook? It's funny, we're talking coach analogy, right? What is your play by play to keep renegades like you going? We've got some love in the chat. Laugh out loud. This is so true. Dr. Rudy will help you get where you want to go. A true coach and cheerleader. It's so true. It's like effortless. Like all of a sudden, I'm on like national stages and doing all these things. And I was like, wow, I just got here in connection with you. I appreciate you. Okay, we got Blaine talking about, I'm so glad to see Dr. Ruiz spotlighted here. He is a master connector and has been a mentor to me in the field of school improvement. You see, and these are the fruits of our labor, right? And we don't do it for the accolades. We don't do it for these things, but this is when you know you are truly living at the epicenter of your calling. And we have to stay rested. For nonprofit visionaries, for leaders in the K through 12 and the higher ed space, for those of us who are addressing that elephant in the classroom of racial equity and systemic racism and all of those different barriers, we have got to stay rested. We have got to stay with our right mind. I meditate, I write. Fitness is a huge part of my life, as I know it is yours. I think you're a bit of a runner. And, you know, those are some things, right? Where we stop, we pause, we engage our best practices because, you know, sometimes we have to pull back. And it's very important for those of you who are in the work, for those of you who are listening under the sound of our voice, rest is a version of resistance. We need to continue to figure out what can slow us down, what can refocus us. And these are just, you know, some of our best practices. Man, it's not often that I get to talk to another fellow nonprofit leader. I just wanted to crack open Pandora's box just super quickly. As people of color in the nonprofit sector, where underrepresentation is still a thing, right? What have been some of the challenges? Because I'll tell you about some of my challenges, right? I am the lead visionary for nonprofit Project 214 in honor of my first classroom. And we provide resources for teachers and students that are on the margins. Now, we recently just transitioned into giving out scholarships and grants specifically for young women of color to really break some of those stereotypes and to really open up access for some of our young ladies from across the country and even international. And man, to keep a team together is tough. Man, to keep your mind right is tough. To ebb and flow, to find funding is tough. And also to find like-mindeds that are a safe space for you, right? That look like you, that sound like you, that go through some of the different challenges that we as leaders of color uniquely go through, right? We don't always gain access to the table, so we have to be creative. We have to be innovative. We have to really sacrifice and hustle. Man, we have to hustle as nonprofit leaders. We constantly have to ebb and flow. We have to leverage social medias, all of our networks. We even put our personal resources. Come on, somebody. I mean, tell me you haven't put some of your personal resources into the work. You know, those are some of my instant challenges, right? Of like really wanting to push nonprofit work and be in the marketplace. I've got Maestra Miranda giving us a triple heart, who is my former guest in the world of dual language. I'm going to turn on my telenovela after this. Yes, because this is our tea, okay? This is our telenovela, okay? You want the tea? It is not easy back here, okay? Trying to run nonprofits and trying to push this idea of EDU equity literally across the country and around the globe. Tell us about some of your lived experiences as a nonprofit leader, and just, man, let's just be real. Like, what are some of those challenges that you're constantly trying to overcome?
I think, you know, we've talked about it here and there with respect to the funding. You know, Baltimore is a place that has an abundance of nonprofits. And so in many cases, you know, we're kind of set up to, unfortunately, be competing against each other all the time to get funding from some of the same sources, which can be a big challenge. And then I think there's also the kind of usual challenge of, you know, folks being a little bit skeptical and wondering, you know, can this this organization that's led by people of color, can they do things in a way that, you know, we think is, you know, well enough organized and is going to be, you know, this, that, and the other. And so kind of having to like prove yourself as a leader and as an organization, even though you may be, you know, well outperforming other groups at, you know, a fraction of the budget and things like that.
Wow.
So that can definitely be frustrating. And I think, again, in terms of my board leadership, I feel like that's my biggest value add to the leaders I support is, that encouragement aspect, because I know it can be draining for them as they're, like you said, pouring their heart and soul and oftentimes, kind of finances essentially into, helping bring that mission to life. And like I sometimes have to remind them and the boards that I've, often helped recruit, something I learned a few years ago in doing some of this work, the idea of, no money, no mission is kind of like, we got to make sure it makes sense for you and your family as well. And so, kind of challenging the folks that are on the boards and in the community, hey, we got to make sure that this good work is getting the support that it deserves.
I love that. And as you and I were talking about the podcast this week, we kind of developed this collaborative quote that I want to share to the listening audience. We said something along these lines: forget being invited to the table. We're making our own. To which I added, we are the dang table. Come on. That is a line. I'm like, this is it. We are the table. Right. And I think that is just so revolutionary for leaders of color, just servicing communities of color in the K through 12 space, in higher ed, in the nonprofit leadership realm, which is literally where you and I have lived for the past several years as we're ebbing and flowing out of these spaces and really just scaffolding, right? And building and building and building until we can't even see what's in front of us because the dream is just growing so large. And I just share that with you, Dr. Rudy. I share your passion. Man, I share your resilience. I share your unstoppability. I share just your desire to network and this idea of, not going at it alone. I love how humble you are and how humble you stay. And that really says things. Let me just say this. And I think that we share some of this in our secret sauce: good energy. It really pays to have good energy and to have a good spirit about you. And as we're navigating and circumnavigating through some of these challenges that are very specific to leaders of color, it does not hurt that we are likable people. It really doesn't. It pays to be nice. It really does. Folks will be more inclined to hear your vision. They'll be more inclined to support you. And as we move forward, I'm personally really, really sensitive to the energy and the vibes that I give out because, man, there's just so much work to be done. And we've got to use all of our assets, right? And I think that you share that. You have good energy. You're very kind. And, and you're just very generous with all of the different gifts that you have and all of the different spots at the table that you have and that you literally seek out and create for others. Don't ever lose that. That's so important to the work. You're so important to our communities of color, and not just where you're at statewide, but across the nation. And I think that that's really important for us to share that so that we could lift one another up, because this work is not going anywhere and there's still so much work to be done. Man, so I've got a couple cool things lined up here. Here comes our section, right, of what I call rapid fire questions. Okay, so we're going to get a little lighthearted, and then we're going to fill in some blanks here. And we're going to hear a little bit more from your heart. But I really just want the audience to know who our guests are, right? And so these are just fun this or that questions, right? So that we can get to know you just a little bit more, right? And see maybe what your preferences are, this or that. So are you ready? I mean, you can't even think about it. You literally just have to be 3 seconds and you got to choose something. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So here's the first one. Rapid fire with Dr. Ruiz. I love it. Okay. This or that. First one is cafecito or té? Coffee or tea?
That has switched to me more recently, so definitely cafecito.
Cafecito, that's it, all day. I mean, honestly, us teachers, it's one of those things, well over 90-something% of us live on coffee. All right, let's keep food. Steak or fish?
That's a tough one. Special occasion steak, otherwise fish.
Okay, all right. I'm a pescatarian myself. I'm gonna let you slide on that one. That's cool. That's cool. All right, so let's talk rice because that is very much a staple to our cultural landscapes and to our diets, right? But let's see what you favor. Arroz rojo, Mexican rice, that red rice, or the ever famous arroz con gandules.
Well, my wife is was born in Puerto Rico as Puerto Rican, so I'm definitely with arroz con gandules on this one.
Arroz con gandules, let's go. I mean, honestly, I feel like that is such a famous rice. And if you perfect it, man, you definitely get some type of like, you should get some star treatment because that is a special rice to perfect. All right, let's go breakfast, Mexican breakfast. Okay. Chiliquiles or chorizo.
Definitely huevos con chorizo. Comfort
Huevos.
food number one right there.
All right, I see that. I see that. And now, since I'm a pescatarian, I do like soy based, but not everybody's a fan of it. But you really can't even tell. My personal opinion. But yes. How about this? Tacos or tortas?
Tacos for sure.
Tacos. They're so versatile, right? Like you could mix proteins. It could be steak tacos. It could be fish tacos. It could be shrimp tacos. And now we got veggie tacos. Like I mean, it's so endless, right? Oh, we got some music playing in the background. Okay, I see it. All right, let's go sports. How about basketball or wrestling?
Wrestling for me for sure. For my boys, more so basketball.
I know, right? Because I feel like your boys are kind of nestled in both, but wrestling, I feel like you're a wrestling family, right?
Yeah, I mean that's part of what led me to have this. I think grit or resilience, as they say. Wrestling will do that for you.
Yeah, because you were even a wrestler and you were on the mat. And so I figured I kind of gave that one to you. All right. So the last three here kind of lean into our work more or less, getting out of the food and sports category. How about this? Paid travel abroad for a year or paid top tier professional development for a year?
I think the travel piece sounds like fun, and I think don't you have some of that coming up soon?
Yes, absolutely. Travel abroad. See, that's why we're friends. Okay.
You made the right choice.
Yes, because to travel is life. I will be heading to India July 1st through the 18th. I'm excited to engage another international country. That should be our jam to travel and self-discovery. It is thebomb.com. Absolutely. We can stay friends. Okay. How about this? I mean, they're both amazing, but which one would you gravitate towards first? Peace or love?
Love. That was definitely on my mind coming into the conversation. These three things we have, but the greatest of these is love, right?
I love it. And these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. That was the Apostle Paul. All right. Last but not least is compassion or grace.
I think grace is definitely relevant for the work that we do. Again, the edifying aspect. People, even to be honest with you, we went to trademark it. The lawyer said you should look this word up. It has some certain connotations. I'm like, that's not a mistake. That's what we want. So we want to edify. We want to be able to show grace, and we want to make sure that teachers have the holistic support, that we rehumanize education. That's what we're doing.
Woo. And bring grace back into the classrooms. I love it. I love it. That was so dope. Thank you for that. Fill in these blanks for me, Dr. Rudy, as we head towards the end. I want the communities that I serve to have
the holistic support that they need. Absolutely.
That holistic support. Man, that's so dope, right? Teaching to the whole child, but also servicing that whole person and all that person needs. I love it. Con el amor viene la paz. With love comes the peace. Go, Dr. Ruiz, such a role model. You've got some love in the chat. And Arroz con Gandules tribe, let's go. We still got love in the chat. WWE, we got all kind of stuff coming through. Tacos for sure. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughts and ideas on that rapid fire. Fill in these last two blanks for me, sir. My life's mission is
By connecting people.
Say it again.
Yeah, to edify communities by connecting people with the support that they need.
I love it. Edify, support, connect. So dope. And last but not least, on this fill in the blank, what teachers need right now is?
I think it's support, and people ask, what do you mean by that? What does it look like? And, when we are guiding our edifiers, as we call them, we tell them that's the first and foremost and consistent question is to ask the teachers, what does support look for you in this moment? So it's going to be different from teacher to teacher, from school to school, from community to community. And we provide that level of flexibility and care.
I just love that, man. As we near the close and as I inch towards my second with Sophia Speaks segment, again, wanted to thank you so much. Thank you for existing. Thank you for your work. Thank you for seeing me from across the country and for bringing me on board to this incredible and ever-growing mission and team. Thank you for being a listening ear and an advisor for my nonprofit work and for my journey as a speaker. You are doing incredible work. Thank you for the work that you do. If there's any words of encouragement that you want to leave our listening audience, what would that be right now, Dr. Rudy?
I would just say, again, reach out, whether it be to us or to each other, but, not to be in isolation. That's what we need right now is to be in collaboration and to be in community.
Thank you so much. Collaboration, community, reaching out, authenticity. Man, this is what it's all about for us to continue the work, for us to really create and establish real change, and for us to really advance this idea of equal opportunity for all, and this idea of justice for all of those who are on the margins. And so we thank you, Dr. Rudy. It has been awesome. I can't believe that our time has flown by. Please stay amazing. We shall be in touch. And remember, please don't stop doing the work. You are so important to the Latino community, and you are so important to communities of color, literally across the country. Thank you, Dr. Rudy, for your presence and for who you are.
Thank you, Sophia, for shining your light as well. And I also want to say thank you to the Latinx Education Collaborative for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rudy. We will definitely be in touch. I will be speaking with you soon.